heck is Bruno, and why aren't we talking about him? Bruno is not just a character in the Disney Pixar movie Encanto. Bruno is something so much more than that, and we are going to talk about him today. Yes, we are. And we're going to figure out how we can get better together. So one of the biggest things to come out of the movie Encanto, and by the way, so many spoilers coming if you are not familiar with the movie. Sorry about that. I watched this movie and my mind was just blown because it is such a perfect allegory for and a way for me to introduce to you a subject that I'm really interested in, which is called internal family systems. And internal family systems is also known as parts work. And if you know anything about Carl Jung and archetypes, he was very into parts work as well. And there's this concept of us as a human being being a family of parts within ourselves. So you know how within your family there's a family dynamic, right? And each person in the family plays a part, they have a role to play, and you've got your scapegoats, and you've got your bullies, and you've got the critic and the manager, and all of these different people, right? Well, the idea, and this has been around for millennia, like literally, people have realized, indigenous cultures have long held the understanding that inside of us, we are multiple. We have so many different parts of ourselves. And now there is a newer way of looking at this. It's a little less Jungian, and it's called internal family systems. So what it's saying is that inside of you, just like there is a family dynamic in a family, inside of you, inside of me, there is a family of me's in here, of a bunch of different parts that are trying to function together. And they don't always do it very effectively. So there's this really great book called No Bad Parts, and it's by Richard Schwartz, Dr. Richard Schwartz. He is actually kind of the father of the IFS, internal family systems method or concept. But again, this does go back to something that has been obvious to thinkers and theologians and philosophers and just peoples for forever. And when I was watching Encanto, and I was just like, first of all, I was like, this movie is so great. And then as I'm watching it, and I'm just like, this is like an IFS primer. Holy crap, I have to make a video about why we don't talk about Bruno. So there's a lot of memes already about we don't talk about Bruno. And the idea is well, why don't we talk about Bruno? And so Mirabel is the main character of the movie. And she has so basically, nutshell version, at a certain age in this Madrigal family, you get a gift. So you get some sort of magic, okay? So you find your gift, and then your gift, you use that in service to your family and your community. That's what your gift is for. It is to serve. And they're taught this by their grandmother, Abuela. It's beautiful because this movie does have so much in terms of, Latin roots and imagery, and it's so colorful, and there's great music, and there's also that sense of community and family that I really, really like. The setup is that when it's Mirabel's turn to get her gift, she doesn't get one. And that is like a big, maybe the magic is dying. So now it's time for her cousin, Antonio, to get his gift. And so Abuela is like really stressed out, and everybody's nervous, and Mirabel's just feeling lost. Like she doesn't belong. Like I don't have a special gift. I have no gift. I'm useless. And everybody does sort of shove her to the side. But as they're doing this, she does ask occasionally, like, well, whatever happened to Uncle Bruno? And everybody's reaction, there's a whole song about it. We don't talk about Uncle Bruno. And when they say we don't talk about Bruno, we don't talk about trauma. In our family, and many, many families are going to relate to this, we don't talk about trauma. We don't talk about our pain. We don't talk about our failures. We don't talk about our embarrassments, our shame. We don't talk about that. No, We don't talk about it. And there's usually someone within the family, either a matriarch or a patriarch in the family, who gives down the message that we don't talk about this stuff in our family. And I did come from a family where we didn't talk about Bruno. But we had so much Bruno. Our Bruno had Bruno. And it's very interesting that within the movie, actually, when we do finally find Bruno, which it turns out he's been in the house the whole time, living in the walls, because trauma doesn't go very far. It's there, hiding in the walls with us. Even Bruno separates into a separate part. So even within himself, he has parts. So what are these parts? So parts fall into different pieces. And within the movie, it was like I was like identifying each person. I was like, oh, that's this kind of person. That's this. So your parts can be manager parts. Your parts can be you critic parts. There's therapist parts in you who, try to take over and therapize you. There are parts that are childlike. And there are now there are no bad parts, okay, is the important message from Dr. Schwartz. He has spent years working in the prison system and working with some of the most horrible offenders out there to try to understand how they became who and how they are. So this book is a little bit rough. If you have experienced any SA trauma as a child, maybe don't start with this book. I'll recommend some other books in the links down below. But what it is, for a family to function, right, we all need to be working in harmony together. And when the family isn't working in harmony together, then we fall apart, we crumble. And us as the individual gets lost. We just feel lost and hurt and confused. And so when the different parts of us inside of ourselves, when our manager part, who is like the abuela in the movie, she's in charge. She's in charge of everything. She's telling everybody what to do. You do this, you do that. And she's also telling everyone who they are. This is your gift. This is what your gift is for. You will use that gift in service to your family and in service to your community. It's like, wait, I don't get a say in this. We do that to ourselves. Abuela is in here. Okay, I have many manager parts, but I have a manager part in my head that says that there are certain gifts that I have, and one of these gifts is my ability to speak. And that first of all, I must use that gift. Second of all, I must use that gift in service to the community, in service to people. And well, that's great because I do agree with that, and it is something that I want to do. But for a long time, my manager told me how I needed to use that gift. And even if you watch sort of some of the things that we've done on this channel, my manager part, my abuela part, got a little too involved here about what I should speak about, how I should speak, what it should look like. And it wasn't really what I necessarily wanted, but it's what I felt I had to do. And that's what a manager part does. A manager part comes in and tells you how to do what you're going to do. Now, is a manager part bad? No, there are no bad parts. The reason that these different parts, managers and critics, exist is because they're trying to protect us. Protect us from what? What was Abuela trying to protect everyone from? It seems like Abuela in the movie was trying to protect everybody from Mirabel. And it's like, well, what the heck? What's wrong with her? Why are we trying to protect people from her? There's nothing to protect them from. And Abuela's like, you're messing everything up. You're confusing everybody. And so we want to circle back to Bruno, because this is where I think this movie really, really, really just did such a great job of explaining this concept of parts and where trauma lands here. When you experience trauma, whether as an adult or a child, traditionally we experience trauma in childhood, but it can be at any time. I've had trauma, we're in it right now, living through this pandemic. This is a trauma. what happens though with childhood trauma is it gets frozen in you, and you bury that part of yourself deep within your own psyche. And in the words of the IFS system, you create an exile. You exile that part of yourself and you hide it away. And you hide it away with its pain and its shame, but also with its gifts. So if it can't come out and participate in the family, in you, those gifts can't come out either. You lock everything away. And the reason that your manager does that, and then those parts will do anything. The protectors and the managers, they will do anything to stop that exile from bubbling up. Well, what do you mean by everything? I mean everything. I mean substance abuse. I mean self-harm. I mean disordered eating. I mean just anything. Workaholism is mine. I'm not even a recovering workaholic. I have not got that far yet. I know that I am, and I still haven't worked with it enough to get that exile out and then help her heal. So they're trying to protect you because it's almost like touching a live wire. If you access that exile, if you go into the walls and you talk to Bruno, everything falls apart. When you start asking questions about your parts, your different parts of yourself, as Mirabelle in the movie starts asking questions of her sisters and her cousins, their gifts start to fall apart. The house starts to crack. And her abuela like just goes off on her, like, you need to stop. Stop asking questions. Stop asking about Bruno. Stop talking to people. Stop bothering everybody. And when you're doing personal development work, when you're going through therapy, when you're just trying to evolve as a human being, this happens. And I've seen this a lot during the pandemic, because I think the pandemic is churning up a lot of our own buried, exiled trauma. And so a lot of us are reaching, those protectors, those managers, those critics are coming in, and they're just trying to protect us from touching those parts of ourselves that are going to hurt. And so, like, we've all put on, the COVID-15, which for me is now the COVID-20. There's been an increase in substance abuse. There's been an increase in in-home violence. It's all starting to fall apart. And even outside of a pandemic, one of the things that I think stops people on their personal growth journey are the moments when you have a breakthrough. Like Mirabelle has a breakthrough, and then everything goes to shit. Like the house freaking falls apart, literally crumbles, candle goes out, people lose their gifts. It's like a hot mess. And that happens to us in therapy and in our own personal growth. We get to a point where we have a breakthrough, and then suddenly it feels like everything in our lives falls apart, and we very often revert to some of our very worst behaviors. Some of our most troublesome parts take over, but they're not doing it to hurt us. We're not, oh, look, it's the sump pump. We're not trying to hurt ourselves. We're just trying to protect ourselves from pain. But you can't, because Bruno is as much a part of the family as beautiful Isabel is. And it's just so amazing to me that what Bruno really is, he's shame. He represents he's got this thing about seeing the future. Okay, that's his gift. And they talk about how that goes wrong and whatever. But Abuela is really ashamed of him. And that's why she doesn't want anybody talking about him. He's the family shame. He is also the family scapegoat, but so is Mirabelle. There's a whole bunch of gaslighting and scapegoating going on in this movie, and we'll in future videos we'll talk more in depth about those specific types of behaviors within a family. So if Bruno is the shame, Abuela is the manager, protector, controller, Luisa the strong one, so she's the strong part. She's a protector, she's the strength, she's the one that carries the load and never breaks under the pressure. But then she starts to break. She starts to lose her strength when Mirabel starts to ask questions. The beautiful side of ourselves that we want to show to everyone. She is just beauty and grace and happiness and everything that is good personified. And that's a part of ourselves that we try to sell to the world and to ourselves. But underneath who she really is she's creative and colorful and artistic and wild, but she can't be, because she needs to be perfection, and perfection isn't wild and crazy, right? Mirabel, it dawned on me when I was like, well, who is Mirabel in the internal family system of this movie? Mirabel is true self. Because within all of us, there is a core of us that is the actual true us. People call it self. People call it, our divine, or, the divine inside of us. It's a part of you. It's you. It's you. If you were to strip away everything, it is you in your most real essence. That's who Mirabel is in this movie. And she is the part of us that when we are trying to grow and change, starts going on a quest to explore these different aspects of our internal family system, and eventually gets to the point where they start asking difficult questions, or wants to know, well, why don't we talk about Uncle Bruno? Why don't we talk about Bruno? And Abuela loses her shit on her, because Abuela does not want Mirabel to go touch that third rail that is Uncle Bruno, because then all of the shame and so she really, she's horrible. She's horrible to Mirabel. How many times have you been horrible to yourself? Horrible to yourself. Watch the movie, watch what Abuela does to Mirabel, and think, I do that to myself every freaking day. Oh my gosh. Each part within us wants to be its true self. But unfortunately, these parts get pulled into these roles within the internal family system where they can't be. Luisa maybe wants to do other things. Maybe she wants help sometimes. Maybe sometimes Luisa wants to ask for help, but Luisa can't ever ask for help because she has to be strong. So she has to do it all on her own. But that's not sustainable, Isabel, she can't, sometimes she just wants to literally go crazy and make wild stuff and change colors and just, wow! And she can't. And it's like living under that strain. So one of the things about internal family systems that I do want to caution you about, or any parts work, is that you don't try to do it entirely alone. And especially don't go looking for the Brunos, the stuff that's hidden in the walls, alone. Because what happens in the movie is exactly what happens. Mirabel finds Bruno. She talks to Bruno. She finds out what Bruno's shame, guilt, pain, trauma. She finds out what the trauma is. And it's pretty bad. And then because she does that and she tries to bring Bruno back into the family and reintegrate him to the family, the whole house crumbles and things just go really, really bad. That does not have to happen in parts work. When you work with a therapist, or, if you're working with maybe in a group that's doing parts work together, they can help you kind of talk to your exiles, and reintegration is kind of the last phase. Normally it would be getting to know Bruno, talking to Bruno, helping Bruno understand that it's okay, and then introducing him to the family in a safe way, and just yanking him out in the middle of Antonio's party, probably not a good plan. But what does that mean in the real world? What does that mean inside of me? So let's say, for instance, I have a part of me that is, and a lot of these parts are very often their children. And I have, there's a part of me that doing this parts work, which you'll read about in No Bad Parts, and there's a lot of stuff online about this, and I'll recommend some other books. So I've accessed some exiles, parts of myself, and they're very, very young versions of me, and they're frozen in a place of fear and shame, and they live inside of me. They live inside the walls of my head, and they're there. And when they try to kind of poke their head out, it's my manager and protector parts go into overdrive, and they can cause me to do things like binge eat, or just, you know, go like on a spending spree or something like that. Very often you'll do, you know, like behaviors that you do that you know are bad, like, and I don't want to say bad, but bad, you know, it's not healthy. And it's like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? I feel like I was just kind of making a breakthrough, and now I'm like, what am I doing? Well, this is why. So it's better to have someone to guide you through that, so that you can more safely have these conversations, and you are literally having conversations with yourself. That's the wild part about parts work or internal family systems. You kind of do this thing where you're like, okay, you know, identify the protectors and the managers and everything, and you're like, okay, can you guys do me a favor? Can you just go sit over here? And I know you're there, and I know you have a lot of opinions on this, but I want you to just take a seat over here and just let me talk to this Melissa for a little bit, okay? And just, I know you have a lot of feelings and ideas, and we're going to get back to those, but I just want to talk to her on her own, okay? And the you that's having this conversation is your most true self. So you want to anchor and ground yourself when you do this into your most true self, your Mirabelle. Only don't be as wild and frenetic about it as Mirabelle could have been, a little bit more controlled about it. What, you're trying to control her? Yes, I am. And then you start talking to this self, and you explore this exiled self, this part of yourself, and you say like, well, you know, hi, you know, nice to meet you. Who are you? I see the person. I see myself. So I know kind of what age range I'm in. And very often from what I'm wearing or the setting in my mind where I see myself, I will start to remember, oh, okay, I remember what this is. And why it's really important to do this from a really grounded place is because, and I did do this accidentally when I started first doing internal family systems and parts work about 6-7 months ago. I'm the kind of person who's like, I'm just going to dive in and do this. And so I skipped doing all of the other stuff, which was getting to know my managers and my protectors and my critics and my therapists, all this different pieces of myself. I went right to the exiles. I was like, let's find them. No, I'm still trying to recover from that. Starting to get to know them, and then, you know, asking them questions and let them talk. And then, but the key important part, and what they show in the movie, which I thought was great, they didn't do such a great job with Louisa, I feel like, the strong one. They did it really bad, but they did it really well with Isabel. And then they did a really half-assed job with Louisa. And I'm wondering if perhaps there's more that got cut out. Because I think that Louisa's, what she really wanted to do was she wanted to work together with people and not always have to shoulder everything alone, not to have to do everything alone. She always does everything for everyone else, and she always does it alone. So you ask these parts of yourself, well, what do you really want to do? Even your non-exiles, like your managers, okay? Like Abuela. It's like, Abuela, what do you really want? I mean, do you really want to be this stressed out person who's always so afraid that the magic is going to leave the family and you have to hold the family together and the whole community is relying on you? And oh my God, like, is that who you really want to be? No. And then Abuela goes back and she remembers falling in love and having her babies and how much family meant to her. And she remembers that that's what she wants. She just wants her family to be happy and together, and to have love, and to have each other, and just to have community. But she wants that without all of the stress of trying to control, manage, and protect everyone. So, you know, you have those conversations with those parts. And then when you have the conversations with an exile, and you say to them, you know, well, let's just say you weren't back here behind, behind the walls, living in the walls with the rats. What would you rather be doing? The couple of exiles that I have talked to, they are children versions of me. The one little one, she just wanted to run around and dance. She literally wanted to basically just run, dance, and sing. She very much, as now that I remember it, she wanted to sing and dance. I thought that was really interesting because I stopped singing a long, long time ago. What I do for her is I sing, put on my tunes, and I don't just do it in the car anymore. See, I would only sing in the car because I didn't want my family to hear me. Because I don't know, it's embarrassing for my child and my husband to hear me sing. I used to do my silly dancing, but only where like nobody could see me. Now I might bust out into a silly dance in the kitchen while everybody's there. Good song comes on, I'm doing my silly dance. And I've begun singing again. And it's funny because I just realized I haven't sung since before Christmas. But when I started singing again, it felt so good. It felt so good. So good. Those are the things you want to start to ask these parts of yourself. You obviously have some skills and gifts. We all have gifts. But do we need to use those gifts the way the protectors and the managers and do we need to use those gifts either the way we're told to use them or as protectors, managers, critics, therapists, and all of those parts of ourselves where we feel like we need to be doing these protecting things and these managing things and these controlling things. And so that's how we're using our gifts when really we want to use our gifts to do something else. Maybe, just maybe, the part of me that is gifted with the ability to speak doesn't want to spend a bunch of time figuring out how to get the lighting right, the camera settings, writing a script, pre-planning a bunch of stuff to make the perfect educational vlog style mental health video. Maybe she just wants to talk to her phone, which is what I'm doing right now. Lighting's not perfect. Sound probably isn't great. It's probably crooked. I'm hunched over because my back hurts. There's a lot of very imperfect things going on right now. And Elvira's going to do a lot of editing. But here's the thing. Right now, that part of me, the part of me that loves to share my knowledge and kind of like these downloads that, like when I start talking like this, it just comes out of me. I don't pre-plan it. It just comes out. And that's some kind of a gift. And when I try to control that gift, I try to mold that gift into something else to be in service to the community in a way that my manager parts start coming in and like, this is how we have to do this. If we're going to be successful, we have to do it this way, we have to screen it. And then I end up exiling to some extent the real me, the real gift, that part of myself. And so, I asked her kind of over the holidays and Elvira and I talked about this, like, and we said, like, we're going to have more fun. It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, for me, it means what I'm doing right now. So I really encourage you to start looking into parts work, to start looking to internal family systems. Watch Encanto again if you have not watched it yet. It's so good. It has got an amazing score because obviously just, incredibly gifted songwriter. It's got a very Broadway feel to the way it's designed and the musical because Lin-Manuel Miranda, that's his background. But look at it and start noticing that each of the people in the movie, each of the characters are definitely playing a specific role beyond just the name of the character and what their piece is. And if this is actually a pretty small book, no bad parts, and it's his newest book. Most of Dr. Schwartz's books were written for psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health practitioners. And so they read more like textbooks. This one reads less like a textbook. By the way, the foreword is by Alanis Morissette, and she talks in here about how, finding Dr. Schwartz's work really, really helped her. And I thought that was just amazing. I'm like, Alanis Morissette? Or I'm sorry, I was looking at it while but Alanis Morissette wrote the foreword to this book? How random is that? But what we want to feel and I love this. So I'm going to actually read to you. Oh, I'm going to get professional for a second. Excuse me. So she says, I came to see that the true dialogue began when I found this seat of self, when she found her Mirabelle. I would recognize it when I would begin to feel the agendalessness of the IFS 8 C's. So the idea is that you want to have, when you're in your real self, you don't have an agenda. You just want to be. You just want to be happy and stuff. And those 8 C's are creativity, courage, curiosity, a sense of connection, compassion, clarity, calm, and confidence. And if we can look at this process and apply this kind of a process to our own self-improvement and mental health and all that other stuff. Just want to read you quickly the blurb on the back of the book, which probably explains this way better than the 36 minutes of babbling that I just did. So it says, Dr. Schwartz says on the back of the book, is there some part of yourself you wish would go away? Most of us would say yes, whether we call it an addiction, the inner critic, monkey mind, neurosis, sinfulness, bad habits, or some other disparaging name. Yet, what if there was a different way to approach these aspects of yourself that leads to true healing instead of a constant inner struggle, right? Where we're labeling these parts and we're calling them bad. With no bad parts, Dr. Schwartz teaches a revolutionary paradigm of understanding and relating with ourselves, a method that brings us into inner harmony, enhances self-compassion, and opens doors to spiritual awakening. Oh. But for me, it's helped me to understand some of my more perplexing behaviors. I am nowhere near those 8 C's. I am not fully integrated. I don't know in your lifetime if it's possible because we're always creating new parts and we're always creating new exiles. But by being a little bit more aware of it and by having a way to look at these parts of myself, protectors, managers, critics, and not be mad at them and not struggle with them, but instead get curious about them, to get curious about, why do you feel like you need to be so professional? Why? And wait for the answer. Sometimes you don't get the answer right away. Sometimes the answer happens in the shower. That's when I get all my great thoughts. But just kind of sit back. This is where meditation comes in handy, mindfulness. There's an interesting offshoot to this, and I'll do a larger video on it, but mindfulness is a great place to start, just kind of, getting into this place where you're able to just sort of chill, focus on your breathing. Sometimes I have to focus on sound because I focus on my breathing, then I start having anxiety. And so sometimes I just like to focus on sound. Sometimes I'll play like singing bells or whatever, and just get into that still, quiet place in yourself, because that's where you need to start when you do this work. But the interesting thing is with mindfulness, and I know Claudina posted something, I think like maybe about a month ago already on their stories. And it was like, this is so important, because sometimes in mindfulness, we will see our exiles. We will see those parts of ourselves, and we're supposed to just observe them. And what Dr. Schwartz really points out is that that is so cruel to do to ourselves. And I have been doing this for years. I've been seeing the crying child in the corner. But in mindfulness, I'm just supposed to observe her. In internal family systems work, I'm supposed to ask all of the controlling parts to just, you guys, take a coffee break. I'm going to go talk to the crying child. Because in the real world, if I walked into a room and there was a child sitting in the corner crying, and I looked at her and I said, child crying because somebody hurt her. And then I just walked away. That's so cruel. That's cruel to yourself to see your pain, but do nothing about it. That's the piece that's missing in mindfulness. And I feel like internal family systems is the piece that has been missing for me for a really long time, is the actual interaction and dialogue with my thoughts, with the pieces of me that I see, with the memories that pop up when I'm quiet and I am mindful, the curiosity and questioning inside of myself, the dialogue. I can have that in a place of stillness and mindfulness, but I can actually accomplish something instead of just seeing it and walking away being like, wow, there's some fucked up kid in the corner of my mind and she's got problems. Like, great. I think I knew that already. You know, if I didn't know exactly what she looked like, I've certainly been feeling her for 54 years. Thanks a lot. You know, it's like a no shit Sherlock moment. Now I can actually go to her, kind of sit down on the floor. Like, let's get out some dolls. Let's talk. What's going on, babe? Tell me. Do you want to talk to me? If you don't want to talk to me, that's okay. You want to just play dolls? All right, let's just play with our Barbies. And sometimes in my head, little Melissa and I play Barbies. And it's beautiful. And we really like the Barbie camper a lot. I loved my Barbie camper, man. That was some great stuff. And my Barbie townhouse, the original Barbie townhouse. 3 stories, cardboard. Still had to pull the string. You know, we've never gotten to a powered elevator, and I'm glad about that. But yeah, you know, just getting to know those parts of yourself and then slowly, carefully reintegrating them back into yourself. So I think when I'm done with this video, I am going to watch the snowfall, and I'm going to crank up some tunes, and I'm going to sing Broadway show tunes, because that's what little Melissa liked to sing, and she still does. So if you are into parts work, any kind of Jungian archetype work, or if you know about internal family systems, I would love for you to chime in the comments, share what your experience has been, any great resources that you have come upon that have helped you and that you think will help other people. I hope that this video sparks for some of you a new way of looking at things, and I hope that you start talking about Bruno, because we do talk about Bruno here on this channel, because that's how we get better together, with Bruno. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much. Bye.